Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are new here, I'm so glad you've joined us today. Now I've got a little something special to share with you. It's actually my birthday today. But even though it's my special day, I'm here alone sharing this moment with all of you. If you'd like to give me a gift on my birthday, all I ask is that you subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world to me, and it's the best present I could ever ask for. So, if you're enjoying the content, make sure to hit that subscribe button, like, and share with your friends. I appreciate every one of you, and I can't wait to keep bringing you more amazing stories. Thank you so much for being here and for making this day even more special. Maya stood in front of the mirror on her wedding day, her heart brimming with excitement and joy. Her glowing brown skin shimmered under the soft light, and her intricately styled curls framed her face like a crown. She looked every bit the queen she felt she was, and today, she would marry the man of her dreams. James had swept her off her feet with his charm, kindness, and unwavering confidence. Though they came from different worlds, their love felt boundless, a force that could overcome any obstacle. The wedding was nothing short of magical. Rows of white roses and gold accents adorned the grand estate James had reserved for the occasion. Friends and family gathered, their diverse faces reflecting the union of two souls who had defied expectations. Some whispers of skepticism floated through the crowd, but Maya brushed them aside. She had faith in their love. As she walked down the aisle, her heart raced. James stood at the altar, dashing in his tailored suit, his blue eyes locked on her. When they exchanged vows, Maya's voice trembled with emotion. "I promise to love you, honor you, and stand by you through every storm," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. James smiled, his voice steady but heartfelt. "You are my everything, Maya. I will cherish you for the rest of my days." The reception was a celebration of unity and joy. James twirled Maya on the dance floor as guests cheered, their laughter blending with the soft melody of the live band. Maya felt as though she were floating on a cloud. James whispered in her ear, "You're the most beautiful woman in the world. How did I get so lucky?" She blushed, her heart swelling with love. In the months that followed, their life seemed picture perfect. James lavished Maya with thoughtful gifts. A diamond necklace to celebrate their first month of marriage, surprise weekend getaways, and handwritten love notes tucked under her pillow. But for Maya, it wasn't the material things that mattered most. It was the way he looked at her, as if she were the only woman in the room. It was how he held her hand during quiet moments, and the way he listened to her dreams, promising to support her every step of the way. Maya dedicated herself fully to their marriage. She embraced her role as James's partner, supporting his ambitions while nurturing their home with love and warmth. She hosted elegant dinner parties, where her radiant smile made everyone feel welcome. She learned about his business world, asking thoughtful questions and offering encouragement. In return, James praised her to his colleagues, calling her his better half, and the reason he could face the pressures of his career. Maya often marveled at how far she and James had come together. They had faced judgment from outsiders who questioned their relationship. Some doubted their love was genuine, while others criticized the racial and cultural differences. Yet, Maya and James had proven them wrong, building a life filled with laughter, passion, and mutual respect. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their mansion, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Maya leaned against James's shoulder. "Do you ever think about how lucky we are?" she asked softly. James kissed the top of her head. "Every day. You've made my life complete, Maya." Her heart soared at his words. She believed in their love deeply, in the sanctity of the vows they had exchanged. For Maya, this was the happily ever after she had always dreamed of. She saw her future in James's eyes, a life of shared dreams, adventures, and unshakable love. Unbeknownst to Maya, This beautiful chapter of her life was about to take a heartbreaking turn. But for now, she basked in the warmth of a love she believed was eternal, her heart blissfully unaware of the storm that loomed ahead. The golden glow of Maya and James's early days together began to dim ever so slightly, like the fading embers of a once roaring fire. At first it was nothing Maya could put her finger on, just small things that didn't sit right. James, once so present and attentive, had become increasingly distracted. His phone seemed glued to his hand, and his evenings were suddenly filled with urgent meetings and late-night calls. Maya, always the optimist, told herself it was just the pressures of James's high-profile career. As the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, she knew his responsibilities were demanding. Yet, deep down, a tiny voice whispered warnings she couldn't ignore. One night, as they sat together in their sprawling living room, Maya noticed James texting furiously, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Work never ends, does it?" she asked lightly, hoping to draw him into conversation. James barely looked up. "No, doesn't," he said, his tone clipped. "It's just something I have to deal with right now." Maya's chest tightened. This wasn't the James she knew. He used to share everything with her, his triumphs, his worries, even the mundane details of his day. But now it felt as though a wall had sprung up between them, one she couldn't seem to climb. The late-night work meetings became more frequent. James would come home long after Maya had gone to bed, his excuses rehearsed but vague. "It was a client dinner," he'd say one night. "We had to review some urgent documents," he'd offer another. Maya would smile and nod, but each excuse planted a seed of doubt in her heart. One evening she decided to surprise him at his office. She dressed in his favorite red dress, carrying a basket of his favorite snacks. As she walked into the sleek, modern building, the receptionist looked surprised to see her. "James didn't mention you were coming," she said, her smile polite but strained. "He doesn't know," Maya replied, her own smile faltering. She took the elevator to his floor, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and apprehension. But when she arrived, James's office was empty. The lights were off, and his assistant was nowhere to be found. Maya's heart sank. She texted James, asking where he was. It took him nearly an hour to reply. "Sorry, I stepped out for a quick meeting. I'll be home soon," he wrote. Maya stared at the message, her stomach churning. Why hadn't he mentioned this earlier? Despite her growing unease, Maya tried to push the doubts away. She reminded herself of the vows they had exchanged, the love they had shared. "Every marriage has its ups and downs," she told herself. "I just need to be patient." Yet her intuition refused to be silenced. There were nights when James came home smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't hers. His tailored suits bore smudges of lipstick that he'd hastily wiped away, and his explanations seemed increasingly hollow. Maya began to feel like a stranger in her own home. She would cook his favorite meals, hoping to reignite the warmth they once shared, but James would barely touch his plate. "I had a late lunch," he'd say, offering a weak smile before retreating to his study. Loneliness settled over Maya like a heavy blanket. She would lie awake at night, staring at the empty space beside her in their king-sized bed, wondering what had gone wrong. Was she not enough? Had she done something to push him away? Her friends noticed her growing sadness. "Are you okay, Maya?" her best friend Elena asked one afternoon over coffee. Maya forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just tired. James has been so busy and it's been a lot to handle." Elena frowned, her eyes filled with concern. "You know you can talk to me, right? If something's wrong?" Maya nodded but said nothing more. How could she voice the doubts gnawing at her soul when she wasn't even sure of the truth herself? As days turned into weeks, the cracks in their marriage widened. Maya found herself standing on the precipice of heartbreak, torn between her desire to trust the man she loved and the nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong. But Maya was not one to give up easily. She resolved to hold on, to fight for their love, even as her heart whispered that the man she had once known might already be slipping away. While Maya was at home, pouring her love into their marriage, James was leading a double life, one filled with dangerous secrets and reckless desires. Claire, his secretary, was the other woman. A young, ambitious professional with striking green eyes and a sharp wit that James found irresistible. She was everything Maya was not, or so James told himself in moments of weakness. Their affair began innocently enough with flirtatious banter in the office. Claire would bring James his morning coffee, adding just the right amount of cream and sugar, a detail she learned early on. "You have excellent taste, Mr. Kensington," she'd tease, her voice low and playful. James, flattered by her attention, would laugh it off, but her words lingered. Over time, their conversations grew more personal. James found himself opening up to Claire about the pressures of his job and the challenges of balancing work with marriage. She listened intently, her gaze fixed on him with a mix of admiration and sympathy. "You work so hard," she said one evening after a late meeting. "I don't know how you do it." James felt a spark in her words, a validation he hadn't felt in months. At home, Maya was loving and supportive, but her concerns often revolved around their future, their plans, their life together. With Claire, James felt like a man free from expectations, someone who could simply exist without judgment. It wasn't long before their professional boundaries blurred. A business trip to New York became the catalyst for their affair. After a long day of meetings, James and Claire shared dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city skyline. The atmosphere was intoxicating, the wine flowing freely as laughter replaced the tension of their workday. When Claire brushed her hand against his, James didn't pull away. Instead, he found himself leaning into the moment, captivated by her boldness and allure. That night, in the dim glow of a luxury hotel room, their relationship crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. For Claire, being with James was thrilling. She was drawn to his power and charisma, to the way he commanded a room with his presence. She saw their affair as more than a fling. It was an opportunity, a way to secure her place in a world she had always dreamed of joining. James, on the other hand, knew what they were doing was wrong. Each time he returned home to Maya, guilt gnawed at him, yet the allure of Claire was too strong to resist. She was a distraction from the pressures of his life, a forbidden escape that made him feel alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. Their relationship thrived in secrecy. James became adept at hiding his tracks, deleting text messages, and inventing plausible excuses for his late nights. "I have to work late," he'd tell Maya, kissing her cheek as he left the house. "Don't wait up for me." Meanwhile, Claire played her role as the dutiful secretary with ease. To the outside world, she was professional and poised, the epitome of decorum. But behind closed doors, she was a different woman, a temptress who knew exactly how to keep James coming back for more. Their affair was not without its risks. There were moments when James feared being caught, when the weight of his lies felt unbearable. But each time he considered ending things, Claire would draw him back in with a smile, a touch, a whispered promise of pleasure. Unbeknownst to James, Claire had her own motives. She wasn't content to remain the other woman forever. She wanted more. More attention, more commitment, more of the life James had promised to Maya. Though she never said it outright, Claire dreamed of a future where she wasn't a secret, where James would choose her over his wife. As their affair deepened, James became more reckless. He began taking Claire to places where they might be seen, convinced that their charm and careful planning would keep them safe. But with each stolen moment, each whispered lie, the risk of exposure grew. Back at home, Maya remained blissfully unaware of the betrayal unfolding behind her back. She continued to pour her heart into their marriage, convinced that James's late nights were a sign of his dedication to providing for their future. She had no reason to doubt him, no clue that the man she loved was leading a double life. But secrets have a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply they are buried. And for James and Claire, the facade of their perfect lives was about to crumble, with devastating consequences for everyone involved. Maya sat at the edge of their king-sized bed, staring at the empty space beside her. The room, once filled with laughter and whispered dreams, now felt cold and unwelcoming. James had said he'd be working late again, his text arriving just after dinner. "Don't wait up for me," he'd written, as if those words would erase the ache in her chest. She had tried to distract herself earlier in the evening, pouring her energy into preparing his favorite meal: grilled salmon with lemon butter sauce and roasted asparagus. The scent lingered in the air, a painful reminder of the untouched plate she'd covered and left on the kitchen counter. She told herself he'd eat it when he came home, but deep down she wasn't sure he would. The clock ticked loudly in the silence, its steady rhythm mocking the chaotic swirl of her thoughts. Maya felt the tears welling in her eyes again, but she wiped them away quickly. She didn't want to cry. Crying felt like admitting defeat, like acknowledging that the man she loved was slipping away from her. James had changed. She couldn't pinpoint when it started, but the signs were there. The distracted look in his eyes when she spoke, the way he brushed off her attempts to connect, the coldness in his touch that used to be so warm. It was as if the man she married had been replaced by someone she didn't recognize. Maya clung to the memories of their happier times, replaying them in her mind like a favorite song. She thought of their wedding day, the way James had looked at her as if she were the only woman in the world. She remembered the spontaneous road trips, the late-night talks, the mornings they spent tangled in each other's arms. Those memories were her anchor, keeping her from drowning in the sea of uncertainty. But no matter how hard she tried to hold on, the present kept intruding. James's absences were growing longer, his excuses less convincing. His phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter, was now always with him, its screen turned face down. He'd become adept at deflecting her questions, offering vague explanations that left her feeling more confused than reassured. Maya wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that his late nights and secretive behavior were simply the result of work stress. She convinced herself that love required patience and understanding, that it was her duty as his wife to support him through difficult times. So she waited. She cooked his favorite meals, hoping they would remind him of the love they shared. She left little notes in his briefcase, simple messages like, "I'm proud of you," or "Can't wait to see you tonight." She even dressed up more often, wearing the dresses he used to compliment and the perfume he loved. But no matter what she did, James remained distant. He would come home late, his kisses brief and perfunctory. When she asked about his day, his answers were clipped, as if he couldn't wait to change the subject. He spent more time in his study, poring over documents or taking calls that he claimed were too important to postpone. Maya's nights became a routine of silent suffering. She would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering where she had gone wrong. Was she not enough for him? Had she failed as a wife? The doubts gnawed at her, feeding the growing emptiness inside her. Despite her pain, Maya refused to let go of her hope. She believed in the vows they had exchanged, in the love that had once burned so brightly between them. She told herself that every marriage went through rough patches and that this was simply a storm they needed to weather together. "I love him," she whispered to herself one night, tears streaming down her face. "I just need to be patient. He'll come back to me." But patience came at a cost. The more Maya gave, the more isolated she felt. Friends and family noticed the change in her, the way her vibrant smile had dimmed, the shadow of sadness in her eyes. "Is everything okay?" her best friend Elena asked one afternoon. Maya forced a smile. Of course. James is just really busy with work. It's nothing to worry about. But it was something to worry about. Maya's instincts told her that James was hiding something, that there was more to his late nights and distant behavior than he let on. Yet she couldn't bring herself to confront him. Fear held her back. Fear of what she might uncover. Fear of losing the man she loved. So she endured, her love for James outweighing her growing doubts. She poured herself into their marriage, hoping her efforts would rekindle the spark that had once united them. But as the days turned into weeks, the cracks in their relationship widened, and Maya found herself standing on the edge of a truth she wasn't ready to face. Her silent suffering became a testament to her strength, but it also became a prison, trapping her in a cycle of hope and heartbreak. And while she clung to the belief that love could overcome any obstacle, the storm brewing on the horizon threatened to shatter her world completely. It was a quiet evening in the Kensington household, the kind of night that should have brought peace and intimacy. Maya was in the kitchen, tidying up after dinner. The clatter of dishes and the hum of the dishwasher filled the space as she worked, her mind wandering to the life she and James had built together. She glanced at the clock. James was in his study, as he often was these days, claiming to have important work to catch up on. Maya sighed, her heart heavy with longing. She missed the days when they'd spend evenings together talking about their dreams or laughing over silly things. As she placed the last plate in the cabinet, she heard a muffled voice. At first she thought it was the television, but then she realized it was James. He was on the phone, his deep voice carrying through the walls of the house. Curious, Maya moved closer to the study. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, at least that's what she told herself. But something in the tone of his voice caught her attention. It was softer, more intimate, a far cry from the way he spoke to her lately. She hesitated outside the door, her hand hovering above the handle. Part of her wanted to walk away, to respect his privacy, but another part, a stronger, more insistent part, urged her to stay. She leaned in, her ear against the door, and that's when she heard it. "I can't wait to see you again," James said, his voice tinged with warmth and longing. "Last night was incredible. I'll find a way to make more time for us, I promise." Maya froze, her breath catching in her throat. Her mind raced, desperately trying to make sense of what she had just heard. Surely she had misunderstood. There had to be an innocent explanation. But then James's next words shattered any illusions she clung to. "I know it's hard, Claire. But please be patient. I'll figure this out. You mean so much to me." The name hit Maya like a punch to the gut. Claire, his secretary. The woman she had met a handful of times, who had always seemed so professional, so harmless. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The late nights, the secretive behavior, the growing distance between them. Maya stumbled back from the door, her heart pounding in her chest. The room spun around her as the weight of James's betrayal sank in. Tears filled her eyes, but she forced them back. This wasn't the time to fall apart. She needed answers. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Maya pushed open the door to the study. James was sitting at his desk, his phone still pressed to his ear. When he saw her, his face went pale, and he quickly ended the call. "Maya," he began, his voice shaky. I didn't hear you come in." She stood in the doorway, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Who are you talking to, James?" she asked, her voice calm, but edged with pain. James stammered, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. "It was, just a work call. Nothing important." "Don't lie to me," Maya said, her tone firm. "I heard everything." The color drained from James's face. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The silence between them was deafening, filled with all the things he didn't know how to say. Maya stepped closer, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "How long, James? How long have you been lying to me? To us? He hung his head, unable to meet her gaze. It's not what you think, he mumbled. Don't insult me. She shot back, her voice breaking. I heard you. You told her she means so much to you. You promised to make more time for her. How could you do this to me? To our marriage? James finally looked up, guilt etched across his face. Maya, I'm so sorry, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I never meant for this to happen. It got out of control. Got out of control? Maya repeated, her voice rising. You made a choice, James. You chose her. You chose to betray me, to betray everything we built together. Tears streamed down her face now, and she didn't bother wiping them away. Her heart felt like it was being ripped apart, but she refused to let the pain consume her. She needed to understand why. Why, James? She asked, her voice trembling. Was I not enough for you? Did I do something wrong? No, he said quickly, shaking his head. It's not you, Maya. You're amazing. You've always been amazing. I was stupid. I let myself get carried away, and You what? She interrupted. You forgot your vows. You forgot the promises you made to me on our wedding day? James had no answer. He sat there, silent and ashamed, as Maya's sobs filled the room. She turned away from him, unable to bear the sight of the man she had loved so deeply, the man who had broken her heart. I need time, she said finally, her voice quiet but resolute. I need to think. I can't do this right now. Without another word, she left the study, her tears blurring her vision as she made her way to their bedroom. As she closed the door behind her, the weight of the revelation hit her all over again. Her world had been turned upside down, but she knew one thing for certain. This was not the end of her story. Not yet. Maya stood in the center of the living room, her arms folded tightly across her chest, her eyes fixed on James. The air between them was thick with tension, the weight of unspoken truths threatening to suffocate them both. James looked smaller somehow, his usually confident demeanor replaced by a slumped posture and downcast eyes. I want the truth, James, Maya said firmly, her voice steady despite the storm raging within her. No more lies, no more excuses, tell me everything. James hesitated, his lips parting as if to speak, but no words came out. He raked a trembling hand through his hair, the guilt and fear etched deeply into his face. Maya, he began, his voice cracking. You deserve to know the truth. She waited, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Every second felt like an eternity, her mind racing with possibilities, but nothing could have prepared her for what he said next. I've been having an affair, James admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. With Claire. Maya felt the words hit her like a physical blow, her breath catching in her throat. Even though she had suspected it, hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way that she wasn't ready for. She clenched her fists at her sides, willing herself to stay calm. And? She prompted, her voice colder now. What else? James's face crumpled, and he looked away, unable to meet her gaze. She's pregnant. The room seemed to tilt, the world spinning out of control. Maya gripped the back of a chair to steady herself, her legs threatening to give way beneath her. Pregnant? She repeated, the word tasting bitter on her tongue. You got her pregnant? James nodded, tears streaming down his face now. I didn't mean for this to happen, Maya. I swear I didn't. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. A mistake? Maya's voice rose, trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or losing your car keys. This, ? This is a betrayal, James. You didn't just cheat on me. You created a child with another woman. How could you do this? James tried to step closer, his hands outstretched as if to comfort her, but Maya took a step back, her eyes blazing with fury. "Don't touch me," she snapped. "You don't get to pretend to be the victim here." "I wasn't thinking," James said desperately. "I got caught up in something I couldn't control." "But, Maya, I love you. You're my wife. My everything. Please, just give me a chance to fix this." Maya let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "Fix this? How do you propose we fix this, James? Do you think we can go back to the way things were? That I can forget about the fact that you betrayed me? Lied to me? And now expect me to live with the knowledge that your mistress is carrying your child?" James had no answer. He stood there, tears falling silently as Maya's words hung heavy in the air. The pain in her chest was unbearable, a searing ache that threatened to consume her. But Maya refused to let it break her. She wouldn't give James the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. She straightened her spine, lifting her chin as she looked him in the eye. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" she said, her voice quieter now but no less powerful. "I gave you everything, James. My love, my trust, my loyalty. And you threw it all away for what? A fling? A few moments of excitement?" "It wasn't like that," James tried to explain, but Maya cut him off. "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't try to justify it. There is no justification for what you've done." For a moment, the only sound in the room was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Maya stared at James, searching his face for some sign of the man she had once loved, the man she had built her life around. But all she saw was a stranger, someone who had shattered her heart into a million pieces. "I don't know what's going to happen next," Maya said finally, her voice trembling but resolute. "But I do know this. I will not let your choices define me. I will not let your betrayal destroy me." James reached out again, desperation in his eyes. "Maya, please. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Just tell me what to do." She stepped back, putting more distance between them. "You can't fix this, James. Some things can't be undone." With that, Maya turned and walked away, leaving James standing alone in the living room. As she climbed the stairs to their bedroom, her tears finally spilled over, her sobs shaking her body. She closed the door behind her, sinking to the floor as the weight of the betrayal crashed down on her. In that moment, Maya felt like her world had ended. But somewhere deep inside, a small flickering flame of strength began to grow. She didn't know how she would move forward, but she vowed to herself that she would. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where she would rise above the pain and heartbreak and prove to herself and the world that she was stronger than the betrayal that had tried to break her. James sat alone in the quiet of his study, the dim light of the desk lamp casting long shadows across the room. The house was eerily silent, a stark contrast to the warmth and laughter it once held. He stared at the framed photo on his desk, a picture of him and Maya on their wedding day, her radiant smile lighting up the frame. His heart clenched as he traced the outline of her face with his finger. He had ruined everything. The weight of his betrayal pressed down on him like a suffocating blanket. For days, James had replayed the confrontation in his mind, hearing Maya's voice trembling with pain, seeing the tears that she had fought so hard to hold back. Her words echoed in his head, each one a dagger to his soul. "You didn't just cheat on me. You destroyed us." James buried his face in his hands, his body shaking with silent sobs. He had thought of himself as invincible, a man who could have it all. But now, he realized how blind and foolish he had been. In chasing fleeting moments of excitement with Claire, he had lost the one person who had truly loved him for who he was. Not for his wealth, his status, or his charm, but for the man beneath it all. Unable to bear the silence any longer, James stood and made his way to the living room, where he found Maya sitting on the couch, staring out the window. The moonlight streamed in, illuminating her tear-streaked face. She looked fragile, yet unyielding, a woman who had been broken but refused to crumble. "Maya," James said softly, his voice cracking. She didn't turn to look at him, her gaze fixed on the world outside. "Maya, please," he said again, moving closer. "I need to talk to you." Finally, she turned her head, her eyes meeting his. They were filled with pain, disappointment, and a sadness that cut him to the core. "What is there to talk about, James?" she asked, her voice cold and distant. He sank into the chair opposite her, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "I know I've hurt you," he began, his voice trembling. "I know I've done something unforgivable, but I need you to know how sorry I am." Maya's expression didn't change. She waited, letting him continue, her silence more powerful than any words she could have spoken. "I took you for granted," James admitted, his eyes glistening with tears. "You've given me so much. Your love, your loyalty, your everything. And I repaid you with lies and betrayal. I was selfish, Maya. I let my ego and my desires blind me to what truly matters." Maya's lips pressed into a thin line, her hands gripping the edge of the couch. "I didn't appreciate you the way I should have," James continued, his voice breaking. "You've been my rock, my anchor, and I threw it all away for something meaningless. Claire, she meant nothing compared to you. I see that now. I see how much I've hurt you, and I hate myself for it." Maya closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "Why are you telling me this now, James?" she asked quietly. "Why now, after all the damage is done?" "Because I need you to know that I regret everything," James said, his voice desperate. "If I could take it all back, I would. I would give anything to undo the pain I've caused you." Maya opened her eyes, her gaze piercing through him. "Regret doesn't erase what you did, James. It doesn't undo the betrayal, the lies, or the humiliation. Do you think your apology will make it all go away?" James shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "No, I know it won't. But I'm begging you, Maya, please, give me a chance to make things right. I'll do whatever it takes." She let out a bitter laugh, the sound laced with both pain and disbelief. "Make things right? How, James? Will you erase the nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering why the man I loved was pulling away from me? Will you erase the humiliation of knowing you chose someone else over me? And what about your child with Claire? How do we fix that?" James had no answers. He looked down at his hands, his shoulders slumping under the weight of her words. "I loved you, James," Maya said, her voice trembling. "I gave you everything I had, and you threw it away like it was nothing. You didn't just hurt me, you broke something inside me. And now you expect me to forgive you?" James looked up at her, his eyes pleading. "I don't expect anything, Maya. I just want you to know how much I regret it. How much I wish I could take it all back. I love you, Maya. I always have, and I always will." Maya shook her head, her tears falling freely now. "Love isn't just words, James. It's actions. It's loyalty. It's respect. And you failed me in every one of those ways." She stood, her movements slow and deliberate. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," she said, her voice steady despite the tears. "But I do know this. I deserve better than this. Better than you." James felt his heart shatter at her words, the finality of them sinking in. He watched as she walked away, her back straight, her head held high. She was broken, but not defeated. And as much as it hurt, James knew she was right. He had lost the best thing in his life, and no amount of regret could ever bring her back. Maya sat in her bedroom, the early morning sunlight streaming through the curtains. The room was still, but inside her heart, a quiet revolution was taking place. She had cried enough tears to fill rivers, mourned the betrayal, and questioned her worth. But now, as she looked at her reflection in the mirror, she saw a different woman staring back at her, a woman who had endured unimaginable pain and was still standing. It was time to take control. The decision to file for divorce didn't come easily. Maya had spent sleepless nights weighing her love for James against the deep wounds his betrayal had inflicted. But as much as it hurt, she knew staying in a marriage built on lies would destroy her. She deserved better, not just for herself, but for the life she wanted to lead. Maya sat across from her lawyer later that week, signing the papers that would officially sever her ties to James. Her hands trembled as she wrote her name, but her resolve never wavered. She felt a mixture of sadness and liberation, as if she were stepping out of a prison she hadn't even realized she was in. When James received the divorce papers, he was stunned. He called her repeatedly, begging for a chance to talk. "Maya, please," he said during one call, his voice thick with desperation. "We can work through this. Don't do this." Maya's response was calm but firm. "James, I've given you every chance to cherish what we had. You chose to destroy it. This is not about punishing you. It's about saving myself." Her words silenced him, and for the first time, James realized he had truly lost her. In the weeks that followed, Maya channeled her pain into something greater. She threw herself into her work, her focus sharper than ever. As a marketing executive, she had always been a force to be reckoned with, but now she was unstoppable. Her creativity soared, her leadership inspired her team, and her confidence radiated in every meeting. But Maya didn't stop there. She felt a calling, a need to turn her personal tragedy into a source of strength for others. She began volunteering at women's shelters, speaking to those who had endured their own heartbreaks and betrayals. She shared her story, not as a tale of defeat, but as one of resilience and empowerment. "Your worth is not defined by someone else's mistakes," she told the women gathered in a small, dimly lit room one evening. "You have the power to rise above the pain, to reclaim your life, and to write your own story. I did it, and so can you." Her words resonated, sparking hope in the eyes of women who had felt trapped and broken. Maya's authenticity and vulnerability made her relatable, while her strength and grace made her inspiring. She soon began receiving invitations to speak at larger events, sharing her journey with audiences that grew with each passing month. Maya transformed her pain into a mission, creating workshops and seminars focused on self-respect, independence, and resilience. She taught women how to set boundaries, recognize their worth, and pursue their dreams without relying on someone else to define their happiness. Her message was simple, yet powerful. You are enough. You've always been enough. Meanwhile, James watched from a distance as Maya's star rose. He saw her on television, read articles about her in magazines, and heard colleagues praise her work. Each mention of her success was a bittersweet reminder of the incredible woman he had lost. He was proud of her, but the regret of his actions haunted him daily. One evening, as Maya prepared for a major speaking event, she paused to look at a photo of herself and James from their wedding day. She didn't feel anger anymore, nor did she feel the deep sadness that once consumed her. Instead, she felt a quiet sense of gratitude for the lessons, for the growth, and for the strength she had discovered within herself. The event was a resounding success. As she stepped onto the stage, the audience erupted in applause. Maya stood tall, her head held high, her heart full of purpose. She spoke with passion and conviction, sharing her journey not as a victim, but as a victor. She reminded everyone in the room that life's greatest challenges often lead to its most profound transformations. And when she left the stage that night, Maya knew she had found her true calling. She wasn't just a woman who had survived betrayal. She was a beacon of hope, a symbol of strength, and a role model for countless others. Maya had taken the ashes of her broken marriage and used them to build something extraordinary. She had proven to herself, and to the world, that no matter how deep the pain, it is possible to rise, stronger and more radiant than ever before. Maya stood on the stage of an international women's conference, her heart racing with anticipation. The room was filled with hundreds of women, all eagerly waiting to hear the woman who had become a symbol of hope and strength. Her journey from betrayal to empowerment had touched lives far beyond what she could have imagined. She was no longer just Maya, the woman who had been hurt. She was Maya, the voice of resilience, the beacon for those struggling to reclaim their power. As she gazed out at the sea of faces, each woman eager to hear her story, Maya felt a wave of gratitude and purpose. Her words had traveled far and wide, resonating with women in different corners of the world, inspiring them to rise above their own challenges. She had gone from the pain of heartbreak to the triumph of transformation, and now, standing here, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. "Maya," a voice from the crowd called out, "you're my hero. Your story saved my life." Tears welled in Maya's eyes as she nodded, acknowledging the woman who had spoken. She had heard this so many times in the past months, but it never failed to move her. Women from all walks of life had come to her, sharing their own struggles with relationships, betrayal, and self-worth. And each time, Maya had shared her message of hope. You are enough. You deserve respect, love, and loyalty. Her voice carried strength as she began to speak, each word filled with the wisdom she had gained from her own painful journey. I stand here before you not as someone who has conquered the world, but as someone who has chosen to rise no matter the odds. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. It wasn't easy. There were days when I felt broken, when I questioned if I could ever trust again, if I could ever love myself enough to walk away from a life that had once meant everything to me. But I stand before you today because I made a choice to honor myself, a choice to walk away from disrespect and rebuild my life, stronger and more resilient than I'd ever imagined. The room was silent as every woman in the audience leaned in, hanging on to Maya's every word. The truth is, we all face challenges, heartbreak, betrayal, and loss. But what defines us is how we choose to rise after the fall, how we choose to take back our power, to reclaim our dignity, and to never settle for anything less than the love and respect we deserve. Maya's words struck a chord deep within the hearts of the women in the room. It was as if her pain had become their pain, her triumph their triumph. And with each passing moment, the women in that room felt the seed of transformation planted in their hearts, ready to bloom into their own strength. Outside the conference hall, the ripple effects of Maya's story were felt across the globe. News outlets covered her journey. Social media platforms were flooded with messages of gratitude and admiration. Maya became more than a motivational speaker. She became a movement of women who no longer tolerated disrespect in their relationships, who understood that their worth wasn't defined by the actions of others, but by the love and respect they gave themselves. Her book, The Strength Within, Reclaiming Your Power, After Betrayal, became a bestseller, reaching women everywhere who had felt lost, trapped, or unseen. In its pages, Maya poured out her heart, sharing her darkest moments and how she had found the courage to heal. She offered practical advice, empowering exercises, and, most importantly, the message that every woman deserved to live a life free from toxic relationships. Through her workshops, Maya became a mentor to thousands of women, helping them rediscover their self-worth and teaching them how to build lives that were fulfilling and independent. She emphasized the importance of boundaries, self-love, and creating a future where respect and love were not negotiable. Her influence extended beyond just women. Men who had been in unhealthy relationships sought her advice on how to build better, more respectful partnerships. Maya became a voice for fairness and mutual respect in relationships, advocating for equality, understanding, and emotional honesty. But perhaps the most powerful part of Maya's transformation was the example she set for her own daughter. Maya had always wanted to teach her daughter that strength didn't come from being perfect or from avoiding pain. It came from standing tall in the face of adversity, from knowing your worth, and from having the courage to walk away from situations that didn't honor who you truly were. One evening, as Maya tucked her daughter into bed, she kissed her forehead and whispered softly, "Never let anyone make you feel small. You are worthy of love and respect. And no matter what happens, you always have the strength to walk away from anything that doesn't honor that." Her daughter smiled, a sense of pride in her eyes. "I know, Mom. You've taught me that." Maya felt a deep sense of peace in that moment. She had not only turned her own life around, but she had also passed on the gift of strength and self-respect to the next generation. The impact of her journey was undeniable. Maya was no longer just a woman who had overcome betrayal. She was a role model for society, a living testament to the power of self-love, resilience, and dignity. She showed the world that it was never too late to take control of your life, to rewrite your story, and to rise above the pain. In a world where women too often struggled to find their voices, Maya became the embodiment of empowerment, reminding every woman she met that her worth was limitless and that no matter the betrayal, she could always choose to rise. James sat in his luxurious penthouse, the skyline of the city sprawling before him. The lights of the buildings twinkled like stars in the distance, but he couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that weighed heavily on his heart. The life he had once imagined for himself, one of endless success and fulfillment, now felt like a cruel joke. Every achievement, every business deal, felt hollow. Nothing brought him the satisfaction it once did. Nothing except the fleeting memory of Maya. He had it all once. The beautiful wife, the wealth, the admiration of his peers. And now? Now he was just a man raising a child with Claire, living in the shadow of his own mistakes. The realization of what he had lost gnawed at him constantly. And every time he tried to find solace in his new life, he was reminded of the irrevocable damage he had caused. Claire, the woman who had once seemed like an exciting escape from his troubles, had become a constant reminder of his betrayal. He had never loved her the way he loved Maya, not by a long shot. Claire's ambition, her desire to climb the social ladder by any means necessary, made her a constant reminder of how far he had fallen from the genuine connection he had shared with his wife. Claire was not Maya. She never could be. Their child, a beautiful baby girl, grew up in a home where James was both a father and a man haunted by his past. He loved his daughter, but every time he looked at her, he was reminded of the cost of his actions. The truth was inescapable. The child he had with Claire was a symbol of the love he had destroyed, the trust he had shattered, and the life he had thrown away. James had tried to call Maya a dozen times, but every attempt had been met with silence. It wasn't just the divorce that had ended their relationship. It was the years of lies, the broken promises, the betrayal that left Maya with scars deeper than he had ever realized. He had never truly understood the weight of what he had done, until it was too late. "I was a fool," James whispered to himself one night, sitting in his study, the whiskey glass in his hand barely touched. He had convinced himself for so long that he was untouchable, that he could have everything, love, success, power, without consequences. But now, as he stared at his reflection in the dark window, he realized how wrong he had been. Meanwhile, Maya's life was flourishing in ways James had never imagined. She had turned her pain into a powerful force of transformation, becoming a role model for women everywhere. Her voice had reached millions and her story was shared across social media, her books becoming bestsellers, her speeches inspiring those who had once felt powerless. James had read some of the articles, seen the clips of her interviews, and heard the praise she received from those who admired her strength. His heart ached with jealousy and regret. The woman he had once taken for granted was now an icon, someone who stood tall and strong while he remained a shadow of the man he had been. He thought of the life they could have had. They could have built an empire together, lived a life full of love and purpose. But now, Maya was living that life on her own without him. She was everything he could never be. She was resilient. She was brave. She was happy. James had never known the depth of his own weakness until he witnessed Maya's transformation. She had walked away from their broken marriage with dignity, and now she was living a life full of meaning and success. She had taken control of her narrative, becoming a beacon of hope for others who had been broken by betrayal, showing them that they too could rise above their pain. But for James, there was no rising. He was stuck in the consequences of his own actions, unable to move forward, unable to let go of the past. The life he had built with Maya was gone, and in its place, he found only regret and emptiness. One afternoon, as he sat in his office, his eyes flickered to a framed photograph of Maya, the woman he had once promised to love and cherish forever, the woman he had betrayed in the most heart-wrenching way. He picked it up slowly, his fingers trembling as he traced the outline of her smile. "I'm sorry, Maya," he whispered, though he knew his words meant nothing. "I'll never be the man you needed." The weight of his regret settled in his chest like a boulder. He had thought he could live a life of endless indulgence, chasing the next thrill, the next high. But now he realized that in doing so, he had sacrificed the one thing that mattered most, the love of a woman who had given him everything. As James watched Maya's continued rise from the sidelines, he knew there would be no redemption for him. Maya had moved on, not just from their marriage, but from the broken man he had become. And as she continued to inspire the world, he remained trapped in his own prison of guilt, unable to escape the consequences of his choices. The price of betrayal was not just the loss of a marriage, it was the loss of everything that truly mattered. Maya had risen above it all, while James was left to face the harsh reality that some things, once lost, could never be regained. Maya, standing before a packed auditorium, concludes her speech. "Love is powerful, but self-respect is non-negotiable. Never let someone's betrayal define your worth. Stand tall because you are enough." The crowd erupts in applause, and Maya smiles, knowing she has turned her pain into purpose.